Good afternoon to all of you. We'll start with this new Leonard cycle with SOA on blue economy. It's an honor to be with you tonight and to launch this event. We will be meeting every month, April, May, June. So this first event with SOA, the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, is ONG based in San Francisco. Since 2014, they've been supporting projects, entrepreneurs on blue projects, positive impact projects for the ocean. And we met with SOA and Leonard about a year ago, and the goal was to really work on blue projects. Leonard, we are the foresight platform from the Vinci company, and for those of you who know Leonard, you know that we organize this type of debate quite often, but tonight it's different from what we do usually. It's an exceptional event for three different reasons. The topics that we work on is usually on cities, on infrastructure, on their future. And if you look at the scale of the planet, we debate about 30% of the planet. And today we are debating on a bigger scope on 70% of the planet. The surface of the Earth is covered by the ocean, and I could say 100%, because when you talk about oceans, you talk about the entire planet, the entire Earth. When it comes to the second point, you'll see we have very high level speakers from their personal history. We'll see it in the next minutes. The ocean on this planet has a very essential place, and this place of the ocean on our blue planet, leaders in the world are becoming more and more aware of its role in the regulation of climate, in preserving biodiversity in the life of our planet. And the international community is working. Catherine Chabaud, who is with us today, came with me and others to the summit, One Ocean Summit in Brest, that was organized by the French presidency of the Council of the European Union. And this was an initiative from President Macron, and there was a lot of efficacy to this work, thanks to the French ambassador for the sea and the ocean, Olivier Poivre d'Arvor. So this is a very recent example, and it shows that this awareness is growing throughout the world. And it's not only leaders in the world that have realized that. Many of us have realized the importance of the ocean, investors, people from the industry, and as you'll see, another important actor at the European level, the European Commission. If I'm here today with you, it's because I was part for almost 2 years, even more than 2 years, of a mission that was called the Starfish 2030 mission. And this mission was launched by the European Commission within the framework of the program Horizon Europe. And the aim is to restore our ocean environment by 2030. I had been at the head of WWF Europe for a few years, and I hired that person, and she came to our first meeting with one main goal: regeneration. And this goal became our main goal. And in order to achieve this regeneration, restoration, but regeneration is maybe a stronger concept, we realized that we needed to act in different areas. Among these areas, you have science, obviously, science, knowledge, sharing knowledge throughout education and information. That's one first thing that is important. And then you have governance. If you have non-successful governance, nothing will happen, or it will be not good. And then you have direct protection actions to protect environments that are targeted, and protecting them, that helps to go forward and to be successful. You have fight against pollutants and pollutions. And then the fifth objective that we'll be talking about today, it's the blue economy. But all of this is interconnected and working together. So you'll see in what we say today that if we want the blue economy to prosper, we need to have at the same time good governance, we need to have innovation, we need to have funding as well. Everything is interconnected. So and this is the first thing I want to see today with you. What are the goals that we are following when it comes to the blue economy? I won't go into too much details, but I would like to give you three main topics. First,
As for decarbonation, this will be tested first and foremost in a flagship project in the Baltic region. This is going to be one of the leading projects which will expand right through to 2026. So it started in 2021. That's when it was initially started, when the European Commission kicked off mission. The European Commission took a number of proposals from within the ocean mission, and it will run right up through to 2026. So these were tested in these water basins. They will be then spread out through the rest of Europe. In terms of decarbonization, there are a number of objectives outlined, and those objectives will be put to the test in the Baltic Sea. Another example, battery-run ferries powered by either ammonia or hydrogen. There are other tech solutions to reduce CO2 emissions in ports and infrastructure. Now, these are the sorts of programs that you will see, for example, here at Leonard, SOA, a little later on. In terms of clean energy in the ocean that are non-polluting and circular systems, you have solutions out there, especially for sea-based and freshwater-based solutions. Again, as part of a sustainable blue economy and circular carbon, our aim is to develop sea-based renewable energies. So the Baltic Sea project will be an opportunity to develop, assess, and reduce risks from clean energy solutions and from offshore wind power and from infrastructure. So that gives you an idea of the issue of decarbonation, there is a whole aspect that I haven't touched on for a clean sea or water farming or aquaculture, but I chose to focus on the most important aspects of our project for people here at Leonard. It's another main objective for decarbonation. And another main aspect is when it comes to tackling pollution. Some people talk about zero pollution. However, our mission, and again, if you're interested in this, you can look into it. We set a number of objectives which are measurable and this is measurable both in terms of overall percentages, but also in time. And this is in relation to all forms of pollution, plastic, chemical pollution from all origins. So for this, we need research and innovation to be able to prevent, minimize, eliminate, and tackle these sorts of pollutions that are harmful to our oceans, that are harmful to everything that lives in the oceans, and that are harmful to our own health. There are 14 million tons of plastic that end up in our oceans every year. So you spoke a little earlier of this trickle effect. If, for example, you throw out your plastic bottle on the top of the Mont Blanc, there is a very high risk that it will end up in the Mediterranean Ocean. It's all a matter of time. So we have to find substitute materials to pollution, or those elements that pollute our oceans, and we need to look into all technical aspects to try and reduce any persistent problems that may remain. In the Mediterranean Ocean, which is our test area, where we are going to start a number of programs by focusing on plastic pollution, the mission will first set up a monitoring system looking at the primary sources of pollution, and what we are looking to observe in the Mediterranean region will then be applied elsewhere. So this is the second main area, fighting or tackling pollution. Again, if we want all of this to work, it needs the right sort of governance. We have Catherine Chabaud, who is here with us, and she is one of the MEPs who are in favor of ramping up governance of our oceans. And this governance needs to reflect the oceans. It needs to be holistic, systemic, interdependent. So the Jacques Delors Institute has been working on this, and we pulled these ideas together in a recent publication that I would encourage you to read. And it is also part of the work that we do at the EU level. But not just at the EU level, also at the international level, because we want to make sure that oceans are a fundamental driver of public policy, drive private policy as well. And for it to have that fundamental power, then all of the decisions need to reflect the importance of the oceans. So, for example, you need to have a clearly identified chief executive of a company that will focus on the oceans. If you're working for the energy sector, or if you're at the European Parliament, you have the Sirica group, and it's good, but these are structures that need to be ramped up wherever they exist, be it in the Council of European Ministers, within the Parliament or the Commission, so that everyone across the board is working towards having healthier oceans. So that's what I wanted to say about some of our overarching objectives as when it comes to having a blue economy. But what are the different levers that we can use? What techniques and mechanisms are in place to help us get there? There are three: investment, innovation, and training. As for investment, we currently have here on our panel, who will speak in just a few moments, we have two main investors with us, the BPI, and we also have a blue investment fund. And I'm sure they are more familiar with some of the finer issues of financing, but first and foremost, we have to observe and analyze what the obstacles are. And many people don't want to invest in the blue economy because they're focusing on the overall economy and they are focused on other priorities which they deem to be more urgent or more profitable. What we see is that SMEs often find difficulties in finding investors simply because there is not the right level of information between them and the investors, because there aren't necessarily the right sorts of assets or equity which will enable them to access certain loans. And also there's an issue of scale for a lot of these companies. So I imagine that the people that we have here this afternoon, they will be able to tell us how we can overcome such obstacles and how we can further foster investment in sustainable economy. What we suggest is bringing together public and private funding to further support a greener blue economy, for want of a better way of putting it. So we want to put on the table a lot of money simply because there is all, as of the first phase, 700 million euros, which will be put into 3 programs. So there's Horizon Europe, the European Fund for Maritime and Fishing Affairs, with more than 200 million.
Un peu moins de 150 millions. Et puis aussi, en nature, l'équivalent de presque 2,5 milliards d'euros de Copernicus qui produit notamment des données qui sont très précieuses pour la sauvegarde de la planète bleue. Ensuite, donc deuxième tremplin indispensable, l'innovation. Alors, il n'est pas surprenant, sachant qu'il s'agit d'une mission dans le cadre d'Horizon Europe, donc de fonds de recherche et d'innovation, que la mission Océan mette un accent très important sur l'innovation dans tous les secteurs. L'innovation va jouer un rôle central dans l'accélération des transitions nécessaires. Et en fait, il va s'agir de convertir les connaissances, d'accélérer la conversion des connaissances en innovation. Je vais vous donner un exemple de ces innovations qui a été illustré par Pascal Lamy, qui est l'autre vice-président d'Europe, Jacques Delors, qui a été illustré par lui à Brest. C'est le jumeau numérique de l'océan, Digital Twin Ocean. C'est un projet qui est européen, mais qui est en harmonie avec un projet mondial qui est porté par l'UNESCO dans le cadre de la décennie mondiale de la science de l'océan de l'UNESCO. Et l'idée, c'est de réaliser une réplique numérique de l'océan dans toutes ses dimensions à l'aide de l'intelligence artificielle. Starfish illustre tout ce que la mer peut engendrer, le formidable potentiel aussi qu'on a devant nous. Et moi, je trouve ça formidable que Vinci et avec Léonard, vous vous interrogiez sur quel peut être notre rôle et comment aborder ces défis. Ce qui me rend optimiste, c'est quand je regarde, parce que je trouve qu'on n'avance pas assez vite, mais malgré tout, si je regarde depuis tout ce qu'on est en train de voir émerger, tout ce que vous financez aujourd'hui, tout ce qu'il y a dans la mission Starfish, on le disait déjà au moment du Grenelle de la mer. Mais il a fallu une dizaine d'années pour que finalement cette acculturation arrive, pénètre la société. Et donc, voilà, moi je trouve que la mission Starfish est un vrai est absolument formidable parce qu'elle synthétise tout ça et l'approche par le ruissellement, par la régénération me semble extrêmement pertinente. Voilà, alors moi j'ai envie de rebondir sur un point, puisque je pourrais rebondir sur tout, il y aurait tellement de choses à ajouter, mais pour réaliser cette transition, d'abord avoir vraiment en tête, et ça on en reparlera, que les infrastructures et tout ce qu'on va développer en mer, que la vie en mer, elle se reproduit dans la bande côtière. Donc il se passe, cette interface entre la terre et la mer est extrêmement importante. Mais que pour avancer dans ces innovations, pour voir émerger le formidable potentiel de développement économique, on est sur une réunion, sur un événement sur l'économie bleue et tout le potentiel que ça engendre, il faut développer des pilotes. On a besoin de pilotes. Parce que on a justement, et ça a été, c'est le sujet sur l'innovation qui a été développé par Geneviève, qui me semble absolument, il me semble absolument important d'avoir en tête que quand on va financer des projets, quand on doit avoir des projets phares, on a besoin d'expérimenter, on a besoin d'engager des spirales positives, etc. Et moi-même, j'ai essayé de lancer des pilotes, et ça n'a pas été facile parce que je pense que c'était un petit peu en avance sur. J'en ai lancé il y a 20 ans et il y a encore 10 ans. Mais on a besoin de pilotes et on a aussi besoin de pilotes à des petites échelles et de faire du transfert de technologie. C'est-à-dire que, par exemple, la course au large, je ne cesse de le dire, et on le voit avec le projet QP dans lequel vous êtes chez BPI notamment engagé, avec le développement avec Krill, c'est-à-dire on parle d'un exemple formidable d'innovation, et elle peut apporter la course au large au transport maritime. Ça fait des années que je le dis, et aujourd'hui on voit que des marins comme François Chabaud, comme Michel Desjoyaux ont créé au sein de leur structure, ils ont des bureaux d'études, ils commencent à s'intéresser et à accompagner les acteurs du transport maritime dans le développement de solutions de manière à renforcer l'efficacité énergétique des navires, à réduire à accélérer la décarbonation avec de la propulsion vélique, etc., qui est complémentaire, et on remet du bon sens là-dessus. Et moi, voilà, un premier message.
So much that can be done out there that we've already been looking at. And I think, remember, we need to have faith and trust in those people with really innovative programs.
Thank you very much. You said innovation was the most important concept. What Geneviève said. Christian? Thank you very much for giving me the floor. First, to introduce myself, I'm the director of a fund called Blue Ocean. It's a venture capital fund. We invest in startups, and we invest in startups that have innovation to regenerate the health of the ocean. What we try to do is to have a systemic impact. You talked about it. And also to have a competitive return for the market. And we believe that combining the both is the most powerful way to do things. We need to have a potential impact that's really large and able to have private capital. And if a company can do that, you can do things as fast as possible. And to be more specific, we try to find solutions for the three big challenges of the oceans. So the over exploitation of the ocean, overfishing is the main topic. Also for ocean pollution, plastic pollution is one topic, but there are other topics. For example, the dead areas because of agricultural pollution. There is also sound pollution in the oceans. And the third pillar, it's solutions for climate change based on the ocean, for example, decarbonation of shipping. And this fund, I'm not sure if I gave the size of it, it's 95 million euros, and we want to be 120 million euros fund. And what's very interesting is that we have investors that are institutional investors, such as BPI, but also Ifremer. It's not a neutral investor, it's an investor that knows the ocean. So there's a partnership between investment in science and innovation. And we also have banks, insurance, pension funds. That means that this topic, 20 years ago, it was given attention by a small niche, but today the mainstream is looking at it, and pension funds are investing in it, and that's very great to see it. We also have a big venture capitalists from Europe and the US investing. So we see that this brings us all together. It's a project that was created in France, but it connects all of it like the ocean does with the rest of the world. That's what we do at Blue Ocean. So why did we want to create this fund? At some point in my career, I was investing in innovation and in innovation that was interesting for the ocean. And I thought it was extremely interesting because since I was a child, I had a very direct personal relationship with the ocean. You have this connection that is very intimate, and I have awareness of the big challenges of the ocean. And when I saw this opportunity to invest to tackle these challenges, I took a decision quite quickly and decided to go on this adventure. To talk about something that was quite striking about what Geneviève said at the beginning is the fact that the European Commission today, through this mission, has this goal of regenerating the ocean. Since I've been in this project, I've tried to make it so that we don't talk only about sustainable economy, because we talked for a very long time about preserving the ocean, and that wasn't the right word to use, because what can we protect now that we have destroyed a very large part of the ocean? It's not protecting that we need to go beyond that. Sustainability is the same thing. It's not ambitious enough. Regeneration, that's the goal that we should have. And I believe that at this is a strong message that the European Commission has this ambitious goal, and I believe that this strong message will help us to spread the word much more largely. Thank you very much. Émilie? Good afternoon. I am Émilie Garcia. I am head of climate ESG for innovation department at Bpifrance. Bpifrance, we have a public investment bank, and we work with different companies of all sizes, all sectors, from their creation to the end of life. We have 6 different big areas for investment. We have a team innovation for creation of startups, with grants, with funding really at the upstream. We also have funding where we work on co-funding with loans with other banks. We also have guarantees in order to help inside banks to go to riskier projects. Also investment. We invest in companies in all sectors industries at all sizes, and we also have a fund-of-fund activity with Christian Lim, for example, as he said. Also have international activity with Bpifrance, and also support. And support, we try to work with all the companies, all our clients, with Bpifrance Université, with networking and accelerator and company promotion in order to have them become more larger scale. So that's the global presentation. We have 50 regional offices and work at the regional level with our customers. We've launched a climate program about 2 years ago with the Banque des Territoires because we thought that climate was one of the main worries and main challenges for everybody today. There are 3 pillars in this program. First is for transition of companies, how to limit the carbon footprint. The second one is development of renewable energy, and the third, support for green tech solution providers. And in order to do that, we have different products for investment funding, for support with climatometers, diagnostics or decarbonation, for eco-facts as well, in order to companies to have the right idea in mind. Also accelerators that we have implemented for waste, for decarbonation as well, different loans, green loans, energy saving loans as well. And when it comes to investment, we have different dedicated funds. We have the Ecotech Fund, also for industrial projects and startups, for materials as well. Different topics are covered by these funds. So that's a global presentation. So no, many things have struck me about what was said. It's difficult to talk about just one thing, but this idea that I want to remember is this image of a plastic bottle coming from the Everest going to the ocean, because it's essential to look at this blue world, decarbonation, pollution. It's very key, and we see this in innovation today. You can't. All startups today are using these key words, but we see that we have a pool of 50% of fund investing in decarbonation, and innovation will be a key because they will help us to go in the right direction. And for oceans, that's very important because we look at shipping, many topics that we cover. Thank you very much. Geneviève, maybe you want to jump back on what was said. No, I don't need mic. I already have one. As Catherine, Christian, and Émilie introduced themselves, I wanted to do the same and say a few words. I started very early in being interested in the ocean. Christian reminded me of that. I was born in Tunisia, and my father was born in France, was really in love with this country and his family. My 3 brothers and I brought me to the sea, and we discovered very natural beaches with, and it was always a joy to be there. And when I want to perform, I go to the seaside, or still today, but this type of places today is polluted, not only the beaches in Tunisia from my childhood, but everywhere in the world. I believe everywhere in the world, those beaches are polluted. When I went diving, for example, with WWF, I saw a lot of plastic, plastic currents. If you go to Funakhen, it's a paradise for divers there, but you'll see turtles, beneath you, but if you look up, you will see a current of water coming out of the harbor of Matador. So everywhere in the world, you are faced with this type of pollution. When you loved and you love the sea, as is my case, it's my childhood, it's really hurtful because the sea is part of us in a way. And we all need to react, we all need to do something, and we need to work with all our capacities and skills, our capacity for innovation, but also with all our money, because we need to put our money where it's best used. And I'm very happy to have two investors with us, different sizes. Bpifrance is quite a big actor, and I believe that for Christian, fund it will grow. But I think it is a must. We need to do this urgently. To do something, I also started with diving, and having this contact with the environment is also something that has fed my passion and our passion. For me, it was in Tunisia. It was at Roscoff in the north of Brittany. It is a region where the sea is different and the seabed is different. My father brought me to the sea as well, and when I started diving and when I was at the bottom of the sea, it was really impressive, and I saw that there was a lot of life there. And as early as that, when I was very young, I think we have the same age, but maybe I'm older. It wasn't only plastic. There was waste on beaches, but when you went there, you could see oil, petrol there, and those were, and you had the gassing of ships that created pollution on the coastline. It was something that we were able to reduce. You can find it when there is an incident, and you can find it in the Mediterranean Sea. France has been able, through legislation that gives a lot of power to the maritime prefect, to forbid and solve this problem. We have the possibility to do this work, and there is regeneration, this concept of reviews, and I like this concept a lot. And in my initiative, we have a program for regeneration. And what I want to talk about is what we did when we developed in the Mediterranean Sea a new water treatment plant. It's near the Seine-sur-Mer, and there was a movie that was done 30 years ago, and 30 years ago, there the sea was dead. Scientists had made this movie at the time, and they came back 20 years later after the water treatment plant was created, and there was regeneration in the area. Patricia Ricard, who is the head of the Paul Ricard Institute, always tells this story, and she likes to talk about it because those are beautiful stories, and we have the possibility to truly change the trend and change how things are going. We're talking about the blue economy today. If the sea is polluted, tourism is impacted, fisheries are impacted, and half of turnover linked to the sea is linked to tourism on the sea coast. So you can have tourism, and you can develop energy, you can develop shipping, but there is a part of the economy linked to the sea that needs the sea to be in good health. That's one of the prerequisites, and we need to do this to have a future with the sea. So these topics are really striking. And my question is, with Leonard, with Vinci, infrastructure, and the maritime environment, we have a lot of companies working on this, but what can we do? What are the good projects? What is a good type of innovation? You have examples of what we can do. So I don't know who should start. I have a lot of examples. I have many examples that I talk about because projects that are being funded today, they have been developed a very long time ago. I created an organization called Blue Innovation in order to help all this innovation to actually be implemented. I want to talk about something that I really is close to my heart. And when I think about what Vinci does with infrastructure development, I think it's connected. So when there is infrastructure on the coast or at sea, there is this intelligent concept, smart concept that is positive impact infrastructure. Something that we've seen is that life at sea is reproduced in the coastal areas as well. So we need to preserve this ecosystem, and this concept of positive impact infrastructure, and maybe put the slide up that I shared with you. This concept is a sort of paradigm change. When you develop energies, new energy projects at sea, when you want to improve an harbor, and I believe that you shouldn't create new infrastructure when there wasn't infrastructure. Oh, I don't believe this is the right slide. Oh, this is. I have the same picture in my slides because in 2015 I had I was looking at this wind turbine, but I'm not sure this is my slide. Whose slide is that? Maybe my team sent the wrong slide to you, because those seem to be my pictures. So what I wanted to say is, okay, that's the right one with marine energy. So, sorry, I'm a bit disturbed by what just happened. The idea is to change paradigm. Tomorrow, I'll develop new energy projects at sea, and the question is not how do I reduce my impact on the environment, but how can my infrastructure participate in regenerating the ocean? And this is the point of view that we have to adopt. It is a prerequisite if we want to develop a new energy project at sea. And there will be projects that were announced, for example, by the Prime Minister, floating wind turbines in the Mediterranean Sea, in the Channel, in the Atlantic Sea as well. So the idea is how to contribute to the environment. And there is a scientist, Sylvain Pioche, that had talked to me about these topics. He worked with EESC, for example, on pipeline, and you can imagine that the infrastructure that maintains the pipelines with concrete can be designed when it comes to the type of concrete you use, the size of the element, in order to create habitat for fish.
Now, you know that when you want to anchor a ship in the open seas, you need a solid object that you can hook onto underwater, but you can also utilize those weights, underwater weights, as new habitats for fish. This is one example. On the left hand, you have where we've created a man-made reef structure. And that could either be used just for the natural habitat, or it could be used for farming. So this is a way of having multi-use sites. And another thing that we could work on when developing sea infrastructure, it's about creating not urban planning, but maritime planning practices. And that's what I'm really trying to hammer this message home. And this is what we see in the directive from the European Union, is that we need to bring different uses together as part of that marine planning. It's about having both benefits for the environment and for people. And this is something Geneviève really struck on. is that there are going to be industries out there, some businesses which are going to disappear, others that are going to really come out of the woodworks, and we need to be there to support them, to find joint benefits for both the environment and society. And again, when we look at all of the European directives, when they talk about eco benefits and general benefits, and I think this is part of the discussion here. Now, actually, I would just like to say that I have been part of IFREMA's stakeholder committee. And when looking at the different projects, we very quickly came across a number of projects that had conflicting uses. So we had people come to tell us about their project. It was a major European energy company, not French, but European, and they have offshore wind farms. And they thought that fisheries would support their project, but fisheries didn't support the project simply because it seemed to go against, or it seemed to be harmful to the marine environment and therefore their industry. But actually the solution we found was a technological solution. So it was a use case conflict that needed a solution, and the aim was to create pylons out of a porous material so that life can grow in that porous material. So this is a way of having multiple uses that would have been in conflict, but actually aren't anymore. And that's why it's going to be even more important than ever before to deal with these issues. Now, the Ukrainian crisis, it is a signal. It's a signal that, yes, we have to use our energy better, and we have to rethink the way we use our energies, but also that we need to scale up efforts to try and focus on these new solutions, because these are solutions that are just blocked because of this sort of problem where you have multiple uses that don't work together. But maybe there's a technological solution out there which will be able to break down that blockage so that we can implement this sort of positive impact infrastructure. And this really is the sort of thing that we need to promote right now. Actually, there's another really important point I want just to touch on. When we think about the 2009 offshore wind farms and where we've come from since then, now in France we have fallen behind, and it's being very challenging. And I've been trying to encourage energy providers to turn to this sort of solution, but it's really challenging. And because of that, they kind of sidelined the issue. I really want this to be part of the design brief, or for tender briefs. It has to be part of it. This sort of solution needs to be part of the briefs. Because if it's not in there, then it's not going to be a main priority, despite the fact that there are so many benefits of this. Now, I have been working with an offshore prototype out in the Atlantic Sea. It's been out there for a couple of years now. And when we were working on that, we said, okay, this is a floating offshore wind farm. And here you've got this pylon, which is on a floating platform. And I looked at the floating platform and I said, maybe we could turn this into some form of fish farm. But people told me at the time, convincing financiers that this is going to be worthwhile, it was really hard. But I think now is the right time where people understand, generally speaking, people understand the issues at stake because of events like today. And what's good about here today is that you are aware of these topics, but now we need to carry this message even further and really ramp up speed. Now, again, when you're talking about tenders, just there as France 2030, new offers and new programs, new initiatives are going to be coming out. And it's this notion of impact with the impact from European taxonomy. It's about issues of biodiversity and circular economy, all of these issues that come together. And this is going to be something that people are really going to be focusing on, because especially when it comes to using public money, this is what people are going to be focusing on, and it's going to be compulsory in so many projects, not just in France. So really, I think this is very much going down in the right vein. Now, just to give you a few examples from investments. So this is one example. Now, Now, this is a perfect example on the screen. Now, obviously, we work on sustainable maritime transport as well. I think roughly 80% or 90% of goods that are shipped around the world, well, that's a huge percentage. Only 10% is land-based transport. So that means that there's so much that we can do when it comes to ship renovations or retrofitting. And there's much that can be done also for seaside infrastructure and ports. And I think in that there's so much potential in terms of innovation, new solutions that are really going to be coming out in the next 3 to 4 years. There are some which are still in the woodworks, but we can even go beyond that. And IRO with the ocean wings, that's another perfect example. We've got Grande Sail, cargo sail ships, which is another one we've invested in. And also biofuels, e-fuels, ammoniac fuels, all of these different sorts of fuels. And when we put all of this together in a big mix by maybe having different forms of electricity generation in ports, by looking at the different fuels that we can use, and we throw it all together, we will start to see some really good positive results coming out of it. And also when we look at what regulation is going to do. Now, and another few interesting investments is that we've been working in satellite data for oceanic surveillance. So really, there's so much that we're doing. Other things that we've been investing in, we've been financing a number of projects for microalgae or maritime proteins. There's a lot that can be done in biomimicry and biomimetism. I think there are a number of projects that we've invested there. So these are the examples that come to mind right now. And we also did a fantastic one with SWEN Capital, but I'll let SWEN Capital talk about that. Well, it's a fantastic example. So we've been talking about the ideas. There's so much going out there about the ideas, but what about the means and the resources? So really, we'd like to now talk about exactly how can people access funds? What sort of financing mechanisms are out there, instruments are out there? Because I'm sure people listening to us are going to be very interested in that sort of stuff because they have projects that they want to grow. So it'd be good if people can understand how they can get access to those funds, and also give us a few examples about your latest projects. Well, when we invest, we look for two main things: systemic impact, a positive systemic impact on oceans, and also an opportunity to create an attractive market that will generate other forms of revenue, and it will become self-sufficient almost. So we have a dual approach. We start with problems, for example, overfishing, and we will seek solutions, very practical solutions. It's a top-down approach. And one solution may be aquafarming or aquaculture, but it needs to be sustainable. It needs to tackle it. It shouldn't create other problems. It shouldn't create other forms of pollution. And maybe we can find better ways of having farmed fish as well as wild fish. Or maybe other forms of food, for example, insects. Insects may replace fish meal. And krill. Krill is also a very important one. I'm very committed to protecting the Antarctic regions, and they are currently falling foul of overfishing, and that has a huge impact on krill populations. And it's really quite hard to understand just how essential krill is in making fish meal that is used in fish farms. So really, it is a very harmful mechanism at play. This is the sort of mechanism that we need to put an end to. So if you go and harvest millions of mosquitoes to replace fish meal, go for it. I'd love you to do it. Well, no, I think mosquitoes are one that everyone would love to see being turned into fish meal. And the other thing is that we see a lot of opportunities out there. And we look at all of those opportunities and we analyze them within the framework of those two criteria that we're looking at. So obviously, if you've got a project and you're looking for an investor who's not just trying to get a return on investment, but have an impact, I think there are a number of really great partners out there. So obviously, make sure you've got a good business plan, your market penetration strategy, but also your impact strategy. And that is just as important for us as it is your business plan. Would you like to did you want a few examples? Yes, exactly. So people can visualize what people are talking about. Do you work with algae, sargass algae? So for algae, we haven't yet invested directly in algae, but I could give you an example of two ones that we're currently looking into. The Asparagopsis taxiformis, it's a form of red algae or red seaweed, and it is used for cattle feed, and it is a way of reducing methane emissions when cows are fed with that specific seaweed. So we're investing in that sort of technology. It's both a sea-based technology, but it tackles one of the main greenhouse gas emission issues, which obviously leads to climate change. What about a plastic alternative? Or maybe come up with a truly biodegradable plastic? I mean, I'm just speaking about one factory where I saw that the seaweed is used both for food, but also to create the container. So you have transparent bottles that look like a plastic bottle, but are actually made out of seaweed. And obviously, if you're very hungry once you've finished drinking what's inside the bottle, you can eat the bottle. Do you look at those sorts of projects? So obviously, when trying to find solutions to the issue of plastic pollution, we don't really look at new containers, biodegradable containers, and there's a simple reason for that. Imagine that you could replace all packaging, all plastic packaging by biodegradable plastics. Well, you still have the issue of collecting and reuse. And remember, everything ultimately ends up in the oceans. If it's not collected, if it's not picked up, then it's going to end up in the oceans, and that creates another issue. So it can't be seen as a large scale or the only large scale solution in my mind, but also for it to work. And this goes for all of the solutions that we invest in, which is probably more in response to your answer, is that we look at three main criteria for large scale solutions. It has to be sustainable. So biodegradability, yes, it's a form of sustainable design. It's certainly more sustainable than previous packaging. So single-use plastics, for example. It needs to be high performance and high impact. So therefore, biodegradable plastics need to work just as well as regular plastics. And there are a few issues because when using seaweeds or potato starches, you are often faced with problems in that they don't perform or they don't function the same as plastics. Now, unless you have further innovation, then that's another barrier to scale up. And then there's also an issue when it comes to price competitivity, because these solutions are only going to be viable if they're competitive at a similar price point. So it works, it's sustainable, sure, but if it's too costly, it's going to be a niche product that's going to require a lot of marketing, and therefore you're not going to have large-scale impact. So they're the three main criteria we looked at. But there are examples where you have three criteria altogether. Well, for example, we have Silabs, which these nanosatellites. Sorry, I'm awfully sorry, but Catherine Chabaud is going to have to leave us. No, I'm really sorry because what you're just about to say is so exciting, but I do have a train that I really must catch. Well, everything's going to be available via replay. It's all being recorded, so you can watch this later. You can always go on to Leonard, and it's going to be available in English and French in the replay. Well, first, I just want to talk about plastics. Obviously, we have to look at a systemic approach. For all of these different solutions, you have to look at it systemically. It's not just by saying that, yes, you're going to work on the upstream, that you're going to reduce the polymers, you're going to use different materials, that you're going to focus on that. And it's not just also about managing waste. It's not because you've done that you should not focus on alternative materials. I worked on biosourced materials for about 10 years now as an alternative to polyester and fiberglass solutions, which are about 80% of all materials used in leisure boats. And it takes a long time to get those sorts of projects up and running. But remember, it has to be a systemic approach. Now, just my own little final remarks is that I would like to say that I truly believe that we all have our own role to play in this. And the future of the planet, it's not just up to the leaders, it's not just up to governments, it's not up to companies, it's not up to regulators, it's not up to all those people up there, it's not up to NGOs, it's not up to just citizens, it's everyone together. And that's why I really want oceans to be recognized as a common good, a common wealth that belongs to everyone. And it's only when we truly see the oceans as being fundamentally systemic that we'll be able to truly embrace that notion and improve it. And we really need to be all on board with this together. And this is an idea that I'm trying to really gain traction at the European Union level and at all levels. So I guess that would be my concluding remark. We all have our role to play. So that's it for me. I will have to quickly run off and catch my train now. Thank you all for joining us. And I'll also give you some contacts for the next few events. I think it's a fantastic initiative, and thank you very much. Pleasure to have met you all. Well, thank you very much. So we'll now quickly talk about nanosatellites, because I find that really fascinating.
So yeah, it's easy to see because it's the same size as a backpack. So this French company developed sensors for electromagnetic signals, and these sensors can help geolocate ships that turn off their positioning system. That's what they do when they do illegal fishing, when they are off-gassing as well, or degassing. And this solution is unique and new. There is only one company in the world that has developed this technology in California, but for technical reasons, NC Labs is the only company that really works today, and it changes everything when it comes to ocean governance, because today the ocean is the Far West. When you want to do something secretly, you could do it without any problems until NC Lab and this new satellite was created. So it's an example of new technology, of innovation that has a systemic impact because it is a basic solution to solve illegal fishing. As long as we don't know who is doing the illegal fishing, we can't solve the problem. So this technology gives us a solution. So it helps us to know, but then you need to act. It's the first step in the chain, but it's fundamental and it's essential. And so illegal fishing, according to estimates, it's one of every 5 fish that is being fished. So it's a few millions. We are a small fund. We don't have a lot of resources, but you can really, with small means, have a big impact through this type of solutions. Thank you very much. Do you want to talk about the relationship that you have between BPI and SWEN Capital, how you met, how does it work? So Bpifrance, we look at funding and at investment. We do direct investment and also indirect investment through funds of funds. And we also look at funding and funding of innovation and all these projects that we are talking about with biosourced projects and new packaging. We can see this in innovation and in R&D, but those are usually not in the investment phase because you don't have technologies that are mature enough with enough ROI to have interest from investors. But what is promising is that you see a lot of new projects working on this. And that means that we'll have a new innovation, and this innovation will scale up and will mature and be able to find investment. So that's about what was said earlier. And about the relationship, I'm not exactly sure how it happened because I don't work in this, but I think we have several projects together. Yes. How did Bpifrance become an investor in the Blue Ocean Fund? That was through someone called Guy Demer, because from the beginning of the project, we wanted to bring together investors, people that are passionate about the ocean. We have surfers, sailors, and we have this platform that manages 7 billion euros. That has a good performance, and we are able to attract people. So we have this platform, but also wanted a scientific partner because the ocean is complex, and when we want to regenerate the ocean, it's easy to say but difficult to implement, because when we invest in insect protein, it's great, it can replace krill and replace fish products, but in order to grow the insects, you will contribute to climate change through CO2 emissions, for example by heating. So the company where we invest, the first factory is in Tunisia. So there is an answer for this problem of heat that was found that way. But you need to ask the question to have a very full vision, and you need to have a 360 vision, and everything is linked back to the ocean. So that means that those questions are complex, and to have a scientific partner with us is essential. And when we are investing in ocean solutions, it's also difficult because the ocean is fascinating, it's great, but it's also a difficult environment. Thing rust in the ocean, the life in the ocean attacks the infrastructure as well. Being able to develop technologies and innovation in the ocean, you need a scientific partner to do it. So we started this with Ifremer, and they said we can do the scientific work, and they said, but to invest in a fund we need experts, and Bpifrance did it. So yes, that makes things clearer. So when you say that you need experts for climate change and the oceans, that's true. And you see that in the way that we create projects, we are much more proactive in the way we think of that, the impact as well. We are more and more aware as well. But what's the difficulty is how to raise awareness of the impact and how to measure the impact as well, and this awareness. And there is this interest that we as big companies are integrated in these networks with researchers, with institutions, in order to learn how to work together. And that's the issue. And we can, by doing this, develop pilots and innovation when we know what are the issues from everybody in this ecosystem. So we have reached the end of this roundtable. I wanted to know if there are any questions in the room before we conclude. It's now or never. Yes, I can see a question. I wanted to talk about the environment. You talk about circular economy. You talk about the environment. How will this become operational in 2030, like EVs? When will this be truly implemented when we talk about environmental impact? 2030? I'm not sure I've understood the question. When will the circular economy be in place? Well, the circular economy, if you look at legislation, the laws are being drafted at the European level, but you have also behavior that comes into it. And when it comes to behavior, as Catherine said, it depends on all of us. The way that you wash your dishes, the way you wash your clothes, the way that you do the waste management at home. All of this has an impact on the ocean. Even if you are somewhere in Europe when there is no linked to the ocean, far from the ocean, this has an impact. So this idea of flow is very important, and also individual responsibility. If you are aware that you're on a big blue balloon and that there are higher places and lower places, and the lowest places is the sea, then you see that everything has an impact on the ocean. So there is individual personal responsibility, and that's true also for the circular economy. So we need to learn to buy less, to reuse, and when things are at the end of their lives, you need to do exactly what should be done in order for it to be recycled. But it's true also for product designers. When you look, for example, at smartphones, there are rare earths in smartphones, and they are truly rare, and people are fighting in order to have access to these resources and raw materials. For some countries, such as Peru, the wealth in resources can be seen as a curse, because it doesn't benefit to a large number of people, but it creates a problem with conflicts, power struggles, and money struggles. And these rare earths are being used in smartphones, but not reused. But if you conceive and design your smartphone in order to use very limited amounts of rare earths and maybe substitutes in the future, but also in a way that allows, through design, to reuse the rare earths at the end of a life cycle for another smartphone, you have improved things. So from designers to users, we are all responsible of the circular economy. In order to answer your question, the legislation exists at European level. We were the first one to forbid production of single-use plastic. And this is something where we are leaders, and it is spreading. An example, Tunisia. I know this country very well, so I'm using this example. In the months that followed the interdiction in Europe, Tunisia did the same. So it's spreading, and it's positive. Do you have any other questions? Yes, I have questions. I would like to know, how do we do, in very concrete terms, in order to contact you as investors and to present projects to you that are related to the fight against pollution and in the marine environment in particular? So I'm talking about myself. I'm leading a project fighting against pollution. This pollution comes mainly from rivers. And in Vinci Construction, we have an anti-pollution project putting nets to stop the waste at the level of rivers, and we are trying to find funding and help in order to deploy this project as largely as possible. So concretely, how can we find help? So if you're looking for funding rather than investment, Bpifrance, so we have regional offices and depending on where you are, I can give you the contact of the office to give you the different grants, subvention, loans, depending on the level of maturity. Thank you. Thank you, Émilie. Are there any other questions? No. Well then, thank you very much to all of you. I will now conclude. This event today will be available online, replay in English and French on the website of Leonard. I would like to invite you to write down the date of the next event, the 13th of April. It will be much more specific. The topic is marine renewable energies. So it's a more technical topic, looking at projects in particular. Today, that was the introduction for the cycle. So the next meeting, as I said, is on the 13th of April. You can book on Eventbrite, and we'll continue to talk about this over the next few months. Thank you very much.